Hey, good morning, everybody. Dr. Alan Bogan, members of the faculty, residents, and ladies and gentlemen. So 7 years in 130 is a significant investment in time by any measures. And it's been a tremendous honor and privilege to have spent the past 7 years at the University of Washington. So John Abdullah and I were tasked today to talk to you at the end of 7 years on things that I wish that 2015 me knew starting this residency. After working with Abdullah and John and Dr. Alan Bogan, I would have done well to just tell my younger self, just do what these guys do, and with nothing further to add. I've been very lucky that way. However, as the elder resident of the group, I will share some of my musings along this journey. Starting this journey at the bottom of the ladder, you can then never imagine that one day you'll sit on top. These residents in the years past have been tremendous friends and great teachers, and indeed big shoes for us to fill. I look down the faces that come after me, and I'm excited about the journey you have ahead of you and the success that you are going to achieve. Here are some interesting numbers. 2,500 days and 2,400 cases, 28 research papers, 38 co-residents, 34 faculty members. We had a hot and cold. I went through 4 pages, some of them against the wall. Put on 10 pounds. But
That's all?
Yeah. Notably, 27 hours holding groin pressure in an angio suite. And I also got to travel some. As you're all aware by now, and if you do not, you soon will, that neurosurgery is a way of life, almost taking on religious qualities. Neurosurgery has its own set of knowledge, wisdom, and philosophy. Chapter 1, knowledge. To perform clinical care and operate, you need fundamental knowledge. These are the books that I read. I obsessed for a very long time whether I was going to read Yeomans or Schmedeck and Sweet, and in the end, read neither. My advice would be that you probably just should read something. These are the texts that I found that's just particularly useful and well written, and they served me well at different stages of my career. These online resources are also tremendous. Get yourself a skull, a spine model. It is very hard to learn complex 3D anatomy on a piece of paper. The courses offered by Organized Neurosurgery are great. However, our own Wish Lab courses are honestly on par or better than any national courses that I've been. Make sure you advance your level each year. And remember, as you advance through the years, that the Wish Lab is open 24 hours a day. It's a resource not many people have. Learn to operate early and often from your senior residents and later attendings. Write everything down, and each time you do the case, add more details. Photos and operative videos are invaluable technological adjunct, which we have at our disposal today. A little bit more about operating. As a chief, I spend Sundays prepping for cases. Look at clinic notes, results, and look at scans. Ask yourself, is there anything amiss? Does the operative plan make sense? You should go into the case assuming that the attending knows nothing about the case and that everything they will know is what you will tell them when they walk in. This will allow you to take ownership of the case, even if you're the most junior member of the team. Do the case exactly the way your attending would do it themselves. There are usually excellent reasons why they do things the way they do it. Here's an example of pre-op film review. This is a patient that had a prior IPH due to a ruptured uravi fistula that was treated with a right-sided craniotomy. On follow-up, he was found to have recurrent disease, and a plan was to take him for a repeat crani to ligate the fistula. The scan was obtained as a stealth study for intraoperative guidance. And when looking at it, we saw that there was significant bone resorption. The patient would likely need a prosthetic implant pretty soon. Therefore, instead of subjecting the patient to 2 separate surgeries, we postponed the surgery, fast-tracked a PEEK implant, and the patient was brought back 3 weeks later for an uneventful surgery. This is an AM MRI on the morning of surgery, 4 weeks after the prior MRI. The previous non-enhancing lesion had grown significantly and is now enhancing, suggesting this is likely a glioblastoma. There's also been other cases where the lesions have disappeared entirely. Be sure to look at a scan before putting the patient to sleep. When I mark the patient, I also always ask about allergies, antiplatelet therapy, and anticoagulation, simply as a last line of defense. Check the site of surgery or the level of your spine surgery. This is a full-page ad in the New York Times that the University of Southern California took out to celebrate their new neuroscience institute. As you can see, the brain's the wrong way around. So that's it. Check the start of surgery. Check again. Don't be that guy. Chapter 2, wisdom. We probably have started touching on pools of wisdom. I'm going to talk very briefly about research. I think this is a topic all by itself. Suffice to say that Dr. Ellenbogen, Dr. McDonald, the APDs, and Dr. Durfee have done a tremendous job to facilitate research opportunities for our resident. And absolutely.
Please do not forget that, or I'll get a call this afternoon. Okay?
Unlike the clinical care that you deliver, the fruits of your research benefit you directly. You need it for the academic job market and to distinguish yourself from other applicants. I enjoy the process, and I hope you do too. And I was very fortunate to have traveled to some wonderful places in the name of research and neurosurgery. From Great Wall of China to Waikiki Beach in Hawaii, from Memphis to Cape Town. And I thought this was one of my favorite places in Woods Hole in Massachusetts. There's the best cafe in town. It's called Pie in the Sky. I thought it was pretty appropriate for a neurosurgery meeting. I also think that this is the opportune moment to give a plug for the WFNS meeting, which is going to be in Cape Town in December 2023. I promise, or you can drink wine for anybody that comes. Attending management. Neurosurgeons don't suffer fools. They also hate surprises and delays. Therefore, your life would be infinitely easier if you know more than they do. Just a little bit more, and hence a 3% rule. Why is the case on hold? What does the scan show? How did the patient wake up? Why is the ICU patient attending? Preferably, you can supply this information without your attending asking. Stemming from that, it would be great if you could figure out a way to read your attending's minds. Alternatively, at least learn how to communicate with them. Take heed while also insistent on minute details. Here are some of my favorites. So Dr. Kim is a scuba diver and works underwater, so you always irrigate. So find out who Dr. Ferrer's optician is and make an appointment to see them early in residency. This will help you focus. As for Dr. Shaker, he's Lawrence of Arabia, or sandstorm in the desert. No need to focus or irrigate. Just make sure you have a diamond burr. And for Dr. Chestnut, before Monday round start, you should better brush up on what happened on the international rugby scene over the weekend. So he might take you seriously. In general, don't try to hide stuff from your attendings, no matter how bad or stupid. As Dr. Ellenbergen likes to say, the truth will set you free. This is just like funny for myself on so many levels. Neurosurgery is hard. An interesting recent concept is our career as religion, described in a fascinating work called Work, Pray, Code by Carolyn Chen, looking at tech workers in the Silicon Valley. We prime ourselves mentally, physically, and emotionally in order to work. In recent times, there's an emerging acknowledgement that the bad old ways of residency training need to change. This is reflected in the workout guidelines, emphasis on wellness, and increasing diversity of neurosurgery. Nevertheless, the fundamental demands of neurosurgical training have not changed. It is 80 hours work week in the hospital, and however many hours you need at home to prepare for cases, review surgeries you've done, learn anatomy, do research, write papers, apply for grants. Surely no one does neurosurgery in order to be average. In our program, laziness, sloppiness, and dishonesty are cardinal sins. Grit, tenacity, and empathy are qualities that is often talked up. These are a few brilliant books which explore these qualities far more eloquently than I can describe. For Whom the Bell Tolls by Ernest Hemingway, Mandela's Way by Richard Stengel, When Breath Becomes Air, Paul Kalanithi, and our favorite, The Boys in a Boat, Daniel James Brown. About building character, you come off a 15-case weekend call as a trauma chief, and you also did your first Lewis Kim aneurysm clipping. And this is the tally of the patients that need surgery, not the surgery you've done. Take a shower, brush your teeth, and get a breakfast of champions. You're good for another 8 hours. Sometimes as a junior resident on call, you feel like you must be the only doctor working in the hospital. Well, actually you are. Chapter 3, Philosophy. We meet our patients and their families on the worst day of their lives. Carry yourself with dignity and respect, with due decorum and gravitas. Remember the 3 A's, affable, able, and available. Communicate to your patients and those around you. Take care of yourself and build a network of people that support and elevate you. Build relationships, treasure family, and friendships. We all know the kind of people who are a pleasure to work with, people who could rely upon, and entrust to take care of our own family members if the situation calls for it. These are some of the individuals who demonstrate these qualities I'm talking about. It's about the patient. Your ability as a surgeon may not be what brings comfort to your patient. This is a patient that Dr. Ellenbergen has been taking care of for several years. He's a business executive who suffered an Asia A T3 injury from a skiing accident, whose course subsequently complicated by the development of a progressive syrinx. He experienced gradual stepwise neurologic deterioration despite our best interventions. He has lost so much and was bound in hospital for extended periods of time. This was on Thanksgiving, and all he wanted was to look outside. For whatever reason, nursing, floor protocols, staffing ratios seem to render that impossible. However, apparently, if neurosurgery wanted to take him, that can be permitted. So A junior resident and I took him upstairs to the 8th floor, where we sat there for 20 minutes. I don't think I've ever had a more grateful patient. In the midst of daily pressures and demands, let's not forget, it actually is just about the patients. The things that I did well in residency was to have found wonderful mentors who took me under their wings. Dr. Kim, Levitt, and Shaker have guided my journey into cerebrovascular neurosurgery, truly standing on the shoulder of giants, for which I'm ever grateful. To the residents, find your passion and direction, and everything starts to make sense. When you get to learn and work with high caliber people, it is easy for heart, mind, and hands to come together. The environment you're training in is truly world-class. Never forget the incredible opportunity you have and make the best of it. As you move up the ranks, remember the opportunity and lessons from your chiefs and pass it forward. The cohesion of our residents is unsurpassed, yet you are all unique and supremely accomplished in your own rights. We also have great fun outside hospital. There's on the top left, a rugby game that we went to with Dr. Chestnut and Dr. Wiseman, this local Seawolves. Below that, Bass and myself tempting the enchantment. I think he was post-call, and I can't remember what I was doing, but we made it regardless. Some resident having fun at a local pub. A personal favorite, Michael, John, and myself doing our thing in the sea. And on the top right, that is our last in-person graduation a few years back, and we look forward to our first in-person graduation in a few years this year. And a new tradition that Gil started this year, which I thought was terrific, is our Friendsgiving just this past November. Look after each other as your co-residents are your greatest asset during your training and beyond. Take pride in being a member of this group and take collective responsibility. Your individual actions and words represent that of the other 20. Elevate your class of co-residents to a special bond of blood brothers and sisters. These are lifelong friends who were there with you on the coal face. I'm indebted to these two remarkable human beings. Life cannot come to a stop during residency. At the end of it all, no matter how accomplished, your family and friends are the only people that matters. To them, you are irreplaceable. Coming to America has allowed me to be closer to my parents down in LA. I'm very proud of my sister, Kristen, who is finishing dental school at UCSF. On the bottom left, that's my goddaughter, Piera, who lives in Philadelphia. And she's essentially going to be the next Elaine Gu. She's a fencer though, and she plays the violin at age 6. She's remarkable. In Anna, I have found somebody special. Look after your friendships and your relationships. Residency is tough on them too. WNS this year was in Philadelphia, and after a late dinner, a friend and I chanced upon the Independence Hall and the Liberty Bell, the very symbol of everything this great nation stands for and strives towards. During the bubonic plague, the bell tolls in the town square when funeral pyres are lit. John Donne wrote, "Never send to know for whom the bell tolls, for it tolls for thee." We're living through tumultuous times where fundamental reproductive rights are threatened. To the residents, I hope you'll use your position and status as neurosurgeons to lead and speak out against this and other forms of social injustice that we have yet to overcome. Finally, in closing, Dr. Ellenbogen, I want to thank you for your leadership and guidance. From day one, you set the tone for all of us. And as I venture out into the world out there, I hope to be a credit to you and this program. Love you all. Stay the way you are.
John Williams. It's my big graduation
Ross.
speech. Yeah, John Ross Williams. If you don't know me, I'm circled in red on the left side of the screen there. With my co-residents, Abdullah Feroza and Chris Young. My talk today is a little bit less organized. Over the years, I've thought about this kind of moment over and over and over again. And actually, as the years have gone on, I felt, I guess, less and less confident in what I should say. I feel like I know less about what a neurosurgeon really should be than I thought I did when I started. But I do want to cover a few things I do know and really want to say. Really use this as an opportunity to say thank you to everybody. This has just been an incredible, weirdly beautiful journey, and I am still in shock that I got to participate in it. I'm going to start out by thanking my co-residents with this slide, because it occurred to me this morning that I didn't put one in later in this talk, but it's very important for me to start with that. I think when I applied into neurosurgery, I was very hesitant because I had some concerns about the culture, just that it was so ruggedly individual. And to come in with the two people that I train with and have them randomly, having never really met them before, be Chris and Abdullah, is shockingly fortunate. I just can't imagine better co-residents. They have propped me up at every stage in every way. They have made me look good when I didn't deserve to look good. They put my name on papers. They have just done everything they can for me in every way, and I will never be able to adequately show my gratitude. So thank you both. So like I said, I didn't really know what to say. I couldn't make this really organized and didactic because it's really hard to find the words to tell you what to do to be successful. Most of you already know enough to get through it, and it's going to be hard for me to change your mind on things that you disagree with. Also, PowerPoint's just sort of a tricky way for me to express everything that this experience has been. So if you want to look at your phones, go for it. I'm guilty of doing that in the past. Just a suggestion, there's a guy named @Drill on Twitter who's very crass but funny. So one thing I decided to do when I was doing this and kind of coming up short with the traditional format was reach out to friends from my past and ask them, what would you want young neurosurgeons to know in a training? What would you tell them? Which was really nice because I got to connect with people and I got to give a platform to some of the people who helped shape me. So it's from David Perez. He's a college friend. He now works as a healthcare pharma data analyst. The world is more beautiful for the nuance within it. Embrace the person in the OR, not their diagnosis. Be curious about who they are and what their needs are, because there are so many unmet medical needs going unfulfilled. People are just waiting to be met where they are on their journey. And I really like those words, met where they are on their journey. James Madden, another college friend who lives here in Seattle. He's now a affordable housing consultant and author. And he worked as a patient rights advocate right out of college. He said, Kendrick said it best, sit down, be humble. And he actually worked on legislation to try and make it legal for physicians to apologize for medical error. He said, patients are people, not bodies. Some of those patients are likely even smarter than you, so watch the condescension. He is smarter than me, by the way. And when something goes wrong, don't let the lawyers handle everything. Patients want to hear what happened, why it happened, how to prevent it from happening again, and above all, want to hear human acknowledgement of regret, even if the lawyers tell you not to say you are sorry. So I think meeting people where they are human to human is an important theme. This was some cool input from a friend of mine, RPR Saunders, who's a neuroscientist and geneticist who's now running his own lab at OHSU and the Bollum Institute. He said, fixing the brain will increasingly involve gene therapy and molecular manipulations in conjunction with traditional surgery. The purview of neurosurgeons may change radically over the next 30 years, and it's a good idea for us as trainees and people training trainees to pay attention to human genetics, molecular neuroscience, and gene therapy. And he's a really smart, talented, accomplished guy who is making inroads in those fields. And I think it's a great idea to heed his advice. Advice that's also been echoed by a lot of our faculty, like Dr. Ferrer and Patel. So this is from Chad Larrabee. He's a friend of mine who lives in Missoula. He's the head of a distillery. He's a general wild person. This is us at a saloon in Yellowstone, or just outside. He said, I'd tell them to take care of themselves. Like if you're falling asleep midday, 30 minutes after you text your friend to meet up, or consistently forgetting things like where your car is parked, maybe be mindful of that and check in with yourself and the people around you. He said, I'd be like, you got to somehow find time to stay human. It's from Chloe Lewis, another college friend who's now managing director at a consulting firm. And she works in healthcare. She works with physicians and in healthcare systems constantly. She says, my advice for your neurosurgeons in training, don't put your life on hold until training is over. You'll love what you do and be better at it if you don't feel like you had to give up everything else that was important to you to do it. Time outside of training is scarce, but use it. Don't wait to live the other parts of your life. I think this comes both from her personal experience and actually her research working with physicians, burnout and productivity. So I think that's pretty sound advice. So Jesse Haddon, another Montana friend who actually is a law school dropout, now a small farm owner, who interestingly is very close with his uncle, who's a neurosurgeon. He said, I watched his arrogance really break his family and him. My biggest counsel would be to cultivate humility and groundedness in a deliberate and intentional way. So really focus on what's important to you and the people around you, and how to connect with them as a person and not just walk through the world as a neurosurgeon. It's from Chris Edley. He's actually the person cut off on the right, not his child. Be pretty incredible if his child said this, but I think shortly his child will. Kalash is incredibly intelligent. Chris is a college friend. He owns his own progressive design and consulting firm. He said, keep an eye on doing good in the world, on equity, and don't forget that you're part of an institution and a system and that you can make it better. And I think he means beyond neurosurgery. You know, we can improve the entire system, especially as neurosurgeons. And then probably the most important advice comes from my wife, Jill, who's a critical care nurse, former marketing guru. She says she's very pragmatic, pack snacks. You have to stay fed and watered, pee when you can, cultivate a small passion outside neurosurgery, make it a space to meditate. I have a picture of her with her surfboard just before she paddled out, 6 months pregnant. Surfing has really been sort of our meditation and connection space over these years. Take advantage of your time off, get out of town. Really getting out of Seattle is a big deal. It makes Seattle the special place that it is. And then I think the most important thing with friends and family is open communication. So set real expectations about how much you can communicate and when you'll be available. And then try to involve them in your work. Actually get to know your patients and your stories without violating HIPAA, of course, so that they can share in your difficult days and your triumphs in a really meaningful, personal way. So my take, I'll give a little bit of advice, not too much. Like I said, I don't know if I have the perfect advice for you, but one thing that I've come to think about a lot is resisting helplessness in yourself and others. And that has a lot of different meanings. So there's a personal responsibility in resisting helplessness. So in yourself and the patients that you take care of. So we have to acknowledge that we are in a position of power. There are differences within our group, obviously, due to differences in gender, sexuality, race, and then hierarchy of training. But compared to the rest of the world, regardless of all that, you are still in a position of power. And as such, you owe it to your patients and your colleagues to perform at an excellent level at all times. It really just isn't an opportunity to mail it in or blame some other factor on shoddy work unless it's incredibly egregious. As Chris was saying, there's no substitute for focused time on the jobs. There's that time in the hospital, which we hope is 80 hours a week. Sometimes it's not. And then there's the time outside of the hospital where you augment the 80 hours a week. And there just aren't shortcuts. It doesn't really matter how smart you are. You just have to put in the time. and you have to own it. And then in terms of social justice, I'm a very a progressive leaning person. And I believe personally that my primary solidarity with progressive movements starts with my work and ownership of my work. So I don't think I can do justice as an ally to anybody who needs my help without first being able to take care of them as a neurosurgeon. If they come in and need my help as a neurosurgeon, I owe it to them to give them the best clinical and technical work that I can. And then secondary to that, I owe it to them to meet them at their level and understand as best I can concepts about the differences of their reality and mine. But I think no matter who you are and where you're coming from, the most important thing you can do for social justice, the biggest first step you can take is owning your work and taking care of all your patients the best that you can. So there's also a responsibility to your team. And so avoiding helplessness means elevating your peers, keeping them out of a helpless position. So you want to protect your peers from helplessness by giving them actionable feedback, constructive criticism. If people consistently just get negative, inconsistent feedback, they learn helplessness like a dog in a cage or Romanian orphanage baby, and there can be no improvement from there. So we have to work to communicate with intent, give people clear direction, clear steps for improvement, or they can become helpless and only backtrack from there. And that includes, support staff in the OR. That's everybody that you interact with at every level. And then avoiding helplessness in yourself in a team setting also involves listening. So don't, put your head down and get through the listening process and not internalize things. If you're getting feedback, really try to open yourself up to hear what the person is saying and understand the intent of those words so that you can improve and avoid negative situations moving forward. And then we also have a responsibility to the community and avoiding helplessness. So, you want to know neurosurgery as best you can, but it's also important to be aware of data related to public health and basic science fields and where that overlaps. So, social determinants of health determine outcomes in neurosurgery as well. So knowing, big data on public health aspects, I think is very important. And then like my friend Arpier was saying, and a lot of our attendings have been saying, knowing where basic science is going and how that is going to change our field moving forward is going to offer you, the best options in terms of counseling people on risk benefits and especially alternatives. If there's somebody who can do it better than you, you're obligated to let people know that there's someone who can do it better than you, even if it just means it's a different therapy, not a better surgeon. Patients and families must be informed. Again, you have to meet them on their level. Sometimes it's really time consuming and painful. Getting interpreters, getting cultural liaisons, going back multiple times. But if patients don't understand what they're getting into or their families, you are literally hijacking somebody's body and cutting their head open. And so you have to avoid a situation where it feels like that. And that can take time and a lot of effort and frustration, but it's absolutely necessary. I think it's incumbent on us to support community initiatives and leaders that will drive improved health outcomes. So that means, in who you're voting for, who you're advocating for as hospital administration, et cetera. If they're not helping your patient outcomes, then it doesn't matter, I guess, what it does for your house's resale value or your pocketbook. It's a disservice to neurosurgery, and obviously there's a balance in all this, but it's something to keep in mind. And then, as Chris mentioned, there's a motion right now to undermine delivery of care to women and unborn children in need. and the ability of women to make decisions about their own bodies. We have to work with our colleagues in protecting that, and because not only is it important for those practitioners and those patients and literally all of women, it also translates to us. If we allow things like that to happen, if there are people who have nothing to do with medicine that can make decisions about delivery of optimal care, then we will also lose our autonomy in that regard. So that's the end of my proselytizing. I just want to start a really long thank you because I really owe it to everybody in this department. So this is Mad Dog Mike Williams here with a cigar. That's my dad. One thing he always told me was money, pigs won't eat it. And I internalized that to some extent. Money does matter. You have to pay bills. But I guess it's not my primary driver. I don't think it's any of our primary drivers, which is awesome. But because it's not, if you think about other things that give you value, if I look back on my life, especially after these last 7 years, I am the richest person in the world. There's just no other way to say it. My life has been unbelievable. You guys have really topped me off in becoming the richest person in the world. So I just want to thank you. So I'll say more about Jill later, but just so everybody knows, this is my wife. She's the best. So I want to start with thanking some of my former senior residents, 2 classes in particular that really set an example for me. Ryan Morton and Ali Robinpay were chief 7s when I was an intern, and then Buckley Bono and Bales were, I guess I was a 4 when they were 7s, but they were 2 classes where I think they just did everything right in terms of knowledge, practice, and then human interaction. And they just set an incredible example for me to follow. And I really want to thank all the residents that went ahead of me, but those classes in particular for really showing me the way. I want to thank all my juniors. I worked, I guess, closest with Maggie, Kate, Jessica, and Zach, but really all my juniors, you have protected me. You have given me so much peace of mind, taken so much off my plate, allowed me to get home to Jill, who is the best, as we've seen, allow me to stay healthy. I just can't thank you guys enough for doing your job and going beyond to protect me and the patients that we share. I also want to thank the co-chiefs in the year below me. You guys had a hard loss early on with Bree leaving, but you guys just stepped up. You just did a lot of extra work. Both of you are very close personal friends and always will be. You're just phenomenal human beings. And I couldn't have asked for a better class of my own. And I can't believe I got you guys to follow. So thank you so much. Y'all are money, as Malia is showing here. And then I want to move on to thanking faculty. So some of the folks who've really helped me with research, Dr. Ogeman kind of set the tone, but Christine McDonald really pushed me along in an incredible way, helped me organize my thoughts, get me involved in so many incredible opportunities, helped me get a paper that I'm really proud of through, and has just been an insane mentor to so many of us. And I'm really glad she's taken over a leadership role with research. I also have to thank Sharon Durfee, who has helped me so much in crafting, submitting, and getting papers through. And then Nancy Temkin and Jason Barber, who really pulled meaning out of soup for me on a number of occasions and spent a lot of time dumbing down their findings so that I could understand it. So thank you guys. To the children's faculty, I have so much respect for all of you. I think that's a really difficult place to navigate in a lot of ways, mostly because you're dealing with horrific disease in children. I think you all do it with grace, and we're incredibly graceful with me and training me, especially coming in as a 3 with no idea what's going on. Just your generosity was extraordinary. Dr. Goldstein, I haven't met you. I may never meet you. I hear you're great. Keep doing great things. Dr. Brown, thank you for kind of fearless creativity and expanding what neurosurgery means and what it can be. Dr. Ojman, thank you for your sense of humor. Most of what you do is beyond what I can understand in terms of intellectual power, but your sense of humor really give me a lot of bright spots. Dr. Ellenbogen, I'm going to thank you more later, but thank you for your generosity and patience at Children's. It's a really difficult place to be patient, and you have shown nothing but patience and kindness there. Dr. Helpman, thank you also for your patience. Thank you for involving us in so much of the patient care and decision making. Thank you for getting us into the OR early and often. And then Dr. Lee, when you were there, you were really the chief person that I worked with clinically. I have so much respect for you as a surgeon and as an educator. I have never seen somebody tolerate so much microscopic surgery from horrific technicians with so much grace, and be able to stay engaged and continue teaching. I just thought, yeah, your work with me there was phenomenal and deserves special recognition. And then Dr. Helpman and Dr. Lee, thank you for sharing, I guess, nuance about what it is to be a surgeon and a member of a family. A lot of our conversations, I think, will guide me as I develop into a father. Thank you to Dr. Ravenpay and Gelfenbein at the VA. Thank you for showing us early autonomy and decision-making and a ton of patience. I think that's a really cool rotation in the way that you actually get to integrate with patient care. And I think a lot of that comes from trust from the both of you. So thank you both. To our, I guess, sort of clinical stewards, I have so much respect for the job you do. You kind of take really the most difficult, least pleasurable portion of our jobs and handle it with grace and care, and are just such a wonderful asset to our patients and their families and their understandings and just navigating horrible experiences often. And Dr. Rapport, I have to especially thank. He has really become a friend and a personal mentor over the years. He also helped my wife and I find our apartment, which is in a house, it's an incredible apartment and it's rent controlled, which is great, but it's in a house that is owned by Sue Perry, and her daughter, Amy Hagopian, lives there as well. And they have become our Seattle family, and that has become not our apartment, but our home. And without that connection, I think this experience would have been categorically different. To the brain guys over at the UW, Dr. Ko, you have become a friend of mine and somebody who really made me feel comfortable early on and who I am and what I can offer. People are laughing because you have the horrible, well, rewarding in its own way task of dealing with the R2s running their first ORs, which I have a ton of respect for you, for your patience in doing that. But genuinely, just somebody that I really felt like I could relate to, and somebody who encouraged me to be ambitious intellectually, despite my, I guess, lackluster background. So thank you very much for that. And then just for everything you've taught me in and out of the OR. Dr. Mayberg, I want to thank you for your generosity. In the limited clinical time I've had with you, you have an incredible stature in our world, and I just have found you so easy to work with, generous, and an incredible teacher. And then Dr. Silbergeld, thank you for teaching me how to do a craniotomy, start to finish, owning everything, doing it right the first time, planning for a second time. What an incredible teacher. Thank you so much. To the school-based faculty, Dr. Patel, thank you for making really the farthest reach of technical surgery of any kind seem more comprehensible and approachable. Thank you for always teaching and for your patience. Dr. Ferreira, I can't say a lot about your patience, but I can say a lot about your teaching, which is phenomenal. You expect the best all the time. You throw us in into deep water, and force us to own things in a way that I think is incredibly important. I think that working with you made me a much, much, much better surgeon, and I'm really grateful for that. Dr. Shaker, I surf in my free time. It's one of the few sports where you can saddle up next to the greatest in the world and just see what they have to offer in the front row. That's how I felt when I was under the microscope with you. It was just sort of an incredible experience every time. Not just your technical ability, your wisdom and your experience, but also your, I don't know how else to say it, but spiritual presence in the OR, the way that you fill a room, the way that you interact with patients, and the way that you regard the work on a much more important scale. I just can't thank you enough for your kindness and generosity toward me. To the vascular faculty, I'm not a vascular guy. You guys never cared, which was incredible. You always treated me like somebody who could understand what you were doing and potentially even do it if I chose to do it. Dr. Kim, you have supported me profoundly throughout my residency and then planning beyond. You were so instrumental in getting me my fellowship and potentially my first job, and are really an example of what clinical excellence is in an uncompromising fashion, just owning everything. I can't tell you how much I respect you. Dr. Levitt, you were somebody who is pushing one end of your field in an incredible way, an intelligent way. I think you've become one of the greatest mentors in our faculty and have helped so many folks choose vascular surgery and find success in neurovascular neurosurgery, and have also become a friend and just sort of a personal mentor in how to behave and navigate neurosurgery. Dr. Walker, thank you for all of your encouragement, for showing us what is possible as a clinician, scientist, consultant. You have become a wonderful friend and somebody who gives me a lot of hope and belief in terms of possibilities in the future. To the UW and Hofstadter now, Harborview Spine faculty, Doctors Amin and Karandikar, thank you for always finding a way to get us involved in every step of the process, for being really kind and forgiving, just being great teachers. Dr. Hofstadter, thank you for introducing me to so many concepts in oncological spine surgery, and then of course endoscopic spine surgery. You know, in keeping with what I was saying earlier, I think it behooves us to do the right thing for the patient, even if it's difficult to learn or we don't know how to do it yet. And I think endoscopic spine surgery is oftentimes the right thing for the patient. And I truly hope to continue that throughout my career. And I really respect the enormous effort you have put in to continue and build that practice. And then to this motley crew here, it's funny to see this lineup and say these are the folks that I probably identify with most and want to model my career after most, some hybrid form. But I think these are the guys that influence me the most in terms of what I want to do. I think Dr. Chestnut, Bono, and John, you are three of the most intellectual, creative, and sometimes underappreciated folks in neurosurgery. And I just want to thank you for taking so much time to teach me and then challenge me to think for myself and own things for myself, and showing me that I think parts of neurosurgery that I didn't expect to love were really my favorite parts of it. And then the man, Dr. Ellenbogen. I don't really know where to start. You're why I'm here. You're why I made it through. Sorry, I have a blurry picture of you. I have an old computer, but I cannot thank you enough for the opportunity to interview here, for actually ranking me after I interviewed here, which came as a shock. And then for cultivating a culture like no other, that allowed somebody as odd and eccentric as me to flourish in this field. I can't imagine having trained anywhere else. Yeah, you feel like family. Hopefully I will think of more articulate words by the time of graduation, but usually I'm not a person who's at a loss for words, but I genuinely am. You gave me the whole thing. Thank you. And then my family. I have the coolest family. My mom, my dad, my sister Beth, my niece Aurora. Just the most loving, supportive people. Believe it or not, I'm not just the weirdo in this group. I'm the weirdo in that group too. They never cared. They thought it was great. They gave me everything I ever asked for. They encouraged every weird idea I had. And they were even okay with me training in neurosurgery across the country. And I just, again, in terms of being the richest person in the world, the value of having such a supportive, loving family cannot be understated. And these people made me. So thank you, Mom, Dad, Beth, Aurora, and everybody else in my family. And then there's Jill. Jill, man, Jill's my queen. Jill propped me up through the whole deal. I did not expect to tear up. Jill's just the best. Always has been, always will be. That's her. And that's Bo. And thank you.
Sobering, I'm pinching myself right now. One, to follow these two incredible acts, but also to be here today. I remember this is, very well a tradition over the last 7 years to listen to exiting chiefs and distill their wisdom. And every year I thought, oh, well, between next year and graduation year, I'll have enough wisdom to distill. But here I am 7 years later, and still a relative lack of wisdom, but incredible privilege, obviously, to be here. Obviously, by the numbers, a lot of time and effort over the last 7 years with these two fine gentlemen that you had pleasure of hearing. About 2,300 cases and counting. I still remember my first case, Dr. Silvergold, day one of residency, which was a cervical spine washout. I'm not exactly sure how or why we both ended up in that room, but 2,306 cases later, here we are. A nice swath of cases. But we're not here today to talk about cases or publications, but instead kind of how I wound up here and my thoughts according. So yeah, it's I thought it would be by an R7 more of a Aristotle or a Bertrand Russell, but at best I think I'm little John here, trying to wonder what I'm doing, where I am, and where I'm going. So I think something I've enjoyed and something I'll bore you guys with, just kind of background of how we wound up here. No surprise to most folks here. I started also was a foreign export. Both my parents, mom and dad, originally hail from Pakistan. My dad grew up in what is modern day Lahore, Pakistan, which on this map you can kind of make out in the middle central area of Pakistan, which is the most populous city. My mom, who's half English, half Pakistani, grew up in London for the most part, but her family hails from Amritsar, India. But 75 years ago, we're one in the same country, and obviously over politics and geographical divide, so on and so forth, have had their fair share of history. I was born in Birmingham, England, but spent the first 8 years of life kind of bouncing back and forth between Birmingham, or what people now, I guess, proudly proclaim to be the Detroit of England, and between Pakistan before moving to the States at the age of 8. Early life for me was pretty good. As you can see, the pleasure of kind of living life until, hanging 10. Until I moved to Roswell, New Mexico, as the boss mentioned, at the age of 12. And, that's at least where most of my significant memories seem so to arise from, doing the mundane stuff, as going to school to shearing sheep with my friends who were all ranchers or owners of my best friend, the largest mozzarella factory in the world. So an interesting upbringing for sure. In some ways, I think it's accounted for who I am and where I am as a person. But as Dr. Ellenbogen mentioned, I spent my college days at the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque, acting like I was going to have a significant tennis career. But very quickly realized after my first year there that if I were to be successful, it was going to be in another shape or form. Just an amalgamation of kind of mentors and pictures and memories from my undergrad days. The reason for the Obama photo was I was very, I guess, politically inclined, thought growing up in a household of two physicians that medical school would be the last thing that I wanted to do. I mean, I valued the job that my parents had, their bond with their patients, but I was interested in the sciences as well, but thought, law school or business school or something was more likely in the cards. Accordingly, I spent some time in Washington, D.C. Up the top here is one of our U.S. senators from New Mexico, Jeff Bingham, who is now retired, but it was a great influence, not only that my summer internship, but throughout college as to what I wanted and at least what I thought I wanted. I spent a summer in Geneva working with this gentleman, Dr. Mario Roviglione, who is still the chief of the Stop Tuberculosis Department. And I think, long story short, a large reason of why I turned my attention back towards the medical realm was this gentleman who was able to, so ably and still is so ably able to kind of juxtapose the line between a clinician, a public policy wonk, and also somebody that administrates over a large portion. I think something over 25 or 30% of the overall WHO budget. Just these are people early on that I identified with and kind of want to emulate my career around. This photo on the right is Dr. Alfred Young. He was recently stepped down, I think, a few years ago at the chair of the neuro-oncology department, MD Anderson. Really, by chance, a large degree, I wound up in his lab for a summer during college as well. Long story short, after I came back from my internships, I figured that I wanted to kind of think about medical school once again. Didn't know what I wanted to do, didn't know how I wanted to do it, but knew I wanted to do research and give that a go. And he was kind enough to take me under his wings, and in 12 weeks make me somebody who had no idea what a pipette was to somewhat able of a scientist, able to at least formulate reasonable research questions and to see them out. So for these three gentlemen, I remain truly grateful. Continuing kind of along that path between undergrad and medical school, had some time in DC, and it was very fortunate to have that to be the right time during the discussions of the Affordable Health Care Act in the summer of 2009. And ultimately, it was kind of these experiences mixed therein that really kind of cinched the deal that, medical school and kind of care for others through that stream was how I wanted to proceed in my life. Fortunately, was able to, I guess, convince the admissions committee at Stanford that I kind of knew what I was doing, and found my way to the golf courses of Stanford and somewhat to the medical school as well. You can see me there, testing my 7-iron, but you can see if you can make it up very tiny. The medical school, conveniently enough, is just out of the reach of the golf course there, but I was very lucky to spend 5 years there. Learning what it is to be a clinician, but a scientist, and also just overall, hopefully, a decent human being. Speaking of decent human beings, these are some of my mentors who were kind enough to take me under their wings in medical school. Top left is Dr. Sam Cheshire, who's now a pediatric neurosurgeon at the University of Utah, but took me under his wings, I think, as a second-year medical student with still a pretty minimal research background at that point. And after 3 years in his lab, worked on some pretty interesting stuff along the front of immunotherapy related to medulloblastoma and glioblastoma. Clinically, neurosurgery was something I was interested in, but it wasn't something that I really fully convinced myself that I was an appropriate fit personality-wise until really Dr. Jerry Grant came along. I think towards the tail end of my medical school time at Stanford. He had just come over from Duke, and just the not only the clinician scientist he was, but more the overall person he was, both the responsibility and the care, and just kind of the leadership he demonstrated in all aspects of his life. Is somebody that I gravitated quickly towards. Paul Clanathy, as we all know, his story was somebody that was a resident mentor at my tail end of my time there. For better or for worse, I knew Paul quite well before he was diagnosed with lung cancer, before he got significantly ill, and unfortunately, I was not able to spend much time with him towards the tail end of his time. But his story and kind of his model is something that, even despite kind of what we all know, is something that was very formative for my early thinking as a medical school into junior residency. So research time was one thing that kind of drew me early towards neurosurgery. I won't bore us with kind of the involvement therein, but that research work, not for me, but for my mentors, was incredibly successful, and ultimately something that I think, between the clinical challenges and also the research interest, that fueled my way into seeking a spot in neurosurgery. So 2015, graduated. I spent some time in Uganda, kind of initially interested in pediatric neurosurgery and global health, and ultimately knew that was the way I was headed. Between medical school and residency, though, I still had kind of a little bit more interest in the health policy spin of things, and was able to spend a little bit more time in Washington, D.C., where in theory, I had convinced my medical school that I was working on health policy stuff, and then the department of the First Lady. In actuality, they let me dress up as an Easter bunny and parade around the South Lawn for a few days. Led to some, I guess, incredible experiences while at the White House, and again, appeased my dean enough where he ultimately let me graduate medical school. So there's some good press around it. Unfortunately, there was some bad press around it as well. These are all from 2015, and then I came to find that I shared a career. I didn't know this until a couple of years later with Sean Spicer and some other notables from the Trump presidency. So ultimately realized it was time to switch gears and find another calling, and that's how life in Seattle began. So I still vividly remember the day I stepped foot in Seattle. This is actually my first photo from Seattle, for my first day ever arriving in Seattle, where credit obviously Dr. Ellenbogen and Aubriana Ard are large part of the reason that Aubriana McAvoy, I guess now, large part of the reason that I am here. Not to bore people, but I had done sub-internships at Barrow and Hopkins, and went back to Dr. Grant and said, I enjoyed them, but it was something missing, didn't feel right. And he said, why don't you spend a month in Seattle? And the rest is history. My first morning, Dr. Ellenbogen, I remember my first day of sub-internship, I arrived in your clinic at Seattle Children's at, I think, 7 a.m. With kind of this gas look on my face, and to meet the man, the myth, the legend, Dr. Ellenbogen. We go from there. I mean, the last 7 years, as John and Chris have mentioned, you've truly been an inspiration, more than an inspiration, but a fatherly figure. And I think undoubtedly, the reason that, one, I wanted to be in Seattle, and two, truly somebody that I hope to model the rest of my career after in many ways, number one. This photo from my first morning in residency, and then the next 7 years are kind of a blur. I mean, again, looking at this photo just last week, thinking of kind of all of these people, and I mean, I could talk for minutes, not hours, each of these people and how they've kind of influenced who I am as a person, who I am as a resident. But just very fortunate to be with these two guys, of course, of this mix themselves. I think their actions speak louder than the words, but ultimately, the last 7 years have been nothing but a true joy, and something that when people talk about, residency is something to look on the rest of your career, I didn't really seem to understand why or how, but I think it now speaks for itself. We once had hair and we were once well rested. This was, I think, credit to Dr. Sen and I think our R2 time. We started intern year off in San Diego. I thought this is great. Sharing scorpion bowls with Dr. Kim and Dr. Chowdhury. I said, this is something. This is good. It'll be a good fast 7 years. And then the Chris Young Losing Sleep World Tour hit, and pretty soon thereafter, Chris John and I kind of bounced into the thick of things. So this is us angsting towards the tail end of our intern year about R2 and all the surprise that Harborview had in store for us. It did have a lot of surprises, getting paged at 2 in the morning about patients wanting chocolate milk. The infamous 10 days of nonstop call at Children's, where you're getting paged about feculent matter in EVDs, enough to drive me up the wall, where this, as many of the residents know, my infamous dictation from intern year, where apparently I started actively hallucinating. And you can see here at one point I welcomed the medicine team who had consulted us to discontinue the deodorant at any point, and used to play them as a bow. So yeah, clearly jumped in an intern year at first. It was a blur and a weird 7 years, not only here, but as for Seattle, for the country, and for the world, on many fronts, more than one. I think I don't remember this at all, but apparently at one point, my dating life took a weird spin where I started opening lines, asking other people their favorite brain tumor malignancy as an icebreaker question. So yeah, it's been an interesting, incredible task, but these guys again, ultimately the way we made it through. Oh, I didn't have the video. I didn't realize. I thought it was just a photo, but good job through. No, really, the memories from time at Children's with Jake, Chiba. I mean, they continued through Harborview, through UW. They were, when the ups were up, they were really up, and when the downs were down, they're really down. But as we all know, and we all talked about that, neurosurgery is high risk, high reward, and with that comes times of great trial and tribulation. This was my first apparently thrombectomy that I did as an R3. I remember with Raj, there was patients, as you can see, I don't remember this particular patient. I'll just pick a line of clips, but just demonstrates the severity of the disease process that we see on a day in, day out process, that basically to a level that almost becomes commonplace at times. An opportunity like this where you get to take a step back and realize kind of how privileged we are to be in a space like this, to not only see the pathologies that we see, but the patients that we get to work with, and also the mentors that we have here. And as John put it so well, that we take it kind of for granted, the clinical excellence that we see from our mentors, whether Dr. Shaker, Dr. Kim, Dr. Ellenbogen, Ferreira, the list goes on, but something that I've been very privileged to see on multiple facets at multiple hospitals here. Lessons learned, take these with several grains of salt. I hope and know that I'm still learning each and every day. I think if there was one kind of quote I could find about neurosurgery that I think kind of sums it up best, is this. Actually, I remembered once again, I use this in my personal statement when I was applying to programs, but I think this sums it up really well, that neurosurgery truly is that border where edges meet. It's not only the pathophysiology of the disease process, it's not only the background, the cultural differences, the kind of other stressors that we have to factor on a day basis, our own kind of personal biases, our own personal goings on, all factor into the smallest and the biggest decisions we make on a day in, day out basis. I could fill the next 100 slides with quotes I found in residency that seem to kind of sum it up, but I think truly this Churchill quote that many of us know well really kind of distills what the last 7 years have been, and what I expect training and kind of my junior attendingship years will continue to be. I think big points that I've kind of come away with over the course of the last few years are one, the importance of focusing on questions, not answers alone. You know, as a junior resident, you know, you are expected to have a lot of answers at a very short period of time, but the ability to ask bigger questions, to ask of why is this patient here? You know, why, you know, what is the process going on that culminates in them being here is important to realize that going from your junior residency to senior resident times. The ability to filter advice, no surprise that neurosurgery and residency in general is chock full of advice from people that are well-intentioned. Our role and our ongoing challenge is to be able to filter that advice, apply what is practical and also useful at a particular time, and continue to move forward to the benefit of our patients. The importance of keeping an open mind. I know this sounds cliche, but, you know, truly something that there is a push and pull between pattern recognition, because a lot of what we do and what we see day in, day out is patterns to some degree, but also being able to take a step back, kind of realize that, you know, every patient, every disease process is in of its own, and just using that to kind of factor in and kind of make decisions accordingly. This applies not only clinically, but I think, you know, kind of at a broader scale, kind of personally and professionally as well. Very quickly early on, realize the importance of compartmentalization. Again, you know, from the junior residency days where you know, you're carrying around the spine and the consult pager, you have the HERN phone going off, you have patients to see, you have, you know, post-op checks to complete. I think it becomes very apparent very early on that, you know, compartmentalization is key, kind of using your ability to kind of figure out who is the sickest patient in the hospital, what do I have time for, what do I need to get done before, you know, rounds in the morning. But this, again, also stepping back at a larger level, the ongoing kind of personal and professional dynamics of trying to have it all in neurosurgery and clinical medicine, whether it's, you know, busy clinical practice, whether it's the ability to run a active research lab, whether it's the ability to have time for family and friends, mentors like Dr. Ellenbogen, Dr. Kim, Dr. Patel, Dr. Ferrer. I've seen it time and time again, their ability to kind of deal with things in regimented fashion, but also kind of address needs and kind of on a basis going from one step to the next to the next. The ability to take calculated risks, I think it's something that, you know, all of us are aware of, and part of the reason that we were all drawn to neurosurgery. But I think as a resident, you know, it goes back to kind of the part about advice. There'll be no shortage of advice. There'll be no shortage of people, whether our co-residents or whether our attendings, other people telling us what you should do, what you shouldn't do, what you can do, what you can't do. But just remembering that, you know, risk taking is part of the learning process, and similarly, part of taking risks is speaking up for ourselves, for our patients and our co-residents, and being in an environment that we're able and comfortable to do that. And I think certainly this residency over the last 7 years has been one of those environments. Your words matter, but your deeds matter even more. I didn't think I'd be referencing David Hsu of all my chief residents here, but, you know, it's at the end of the day, what you do and what you say, people will remember, but even more so, how you do it and the fashion in which you do it, I think are more important. And at the end of the day, are the reasons what make and break kind of you know, good outcomes for our patients and for our colleagues as well. No surprise, we know the importance of working hard, but it's not only working hard, but working hard in a rapidly evolving environment. You know, things are not what they seem. Just an example this morning alone, where you know, Rounds itself ended up with the patient currently being crashed to the OR with a ruptured AVM, but being able to kind of have a plan, formulate a plan, know that you should have a plan B, C, and sometimes even D going forward. Like I say here, you know, the training is hard, the war will be easy, but there's no such thing as an easy day in neurosurgery. Along with this, as Chris and John already touched upon, you know, the importance of family and friends can't be underscored. I think neurosurgery does attract a very individualistic, very hardworking, type A personality, and oftentimes me being certainly guilty of this, think that we can go it alone. And there are certainly times I think you can, but at the end of the day, for sustainability purposes and just, for practicality purposes, both neurosurgery residency and just kind of the process in general are far more enjoyable having loved ones to kind of share it with. So times in the day that as a junior resident, I said, I don't have time to talk to my friends or family. And, I've been guilty of losing touch with some people, but over the course of years, found time to reconnect with those people, and something I encourage kind of junior residents to try to make that priority up front. The ability not to jump to conclusions, whether it's finding random Ben Carson for President cards in Dr. Urchman's loot box at Seattle Children's, or just, the personal biases, again, that we all carry kind of a day in, day out basis. I think as much as we try to deny it or think otherwise, we all have our individual biases, whether from our upbringing, from what we heard in the news, from, just how this patient or, this family member made us felt. But A, minimizing bias, and B, abstaining from conclusions, trying to hear people out and to think things through. Paying attention to details. Chris and I did not share our PowerPoint slides, but I guess we were both struck by this same large USC ad in the New York Times on that certain day. So kind of speaks for itself there. What Dr. Ellenbogen always says, loving the patient more than you hate the disease. It's easy to get caught up again on kind of the textbook definition of disease, the radiographic findings in the disease, but being able to kind of interpret every single patient, every single pathology as if it were its own, something that I continue to strive to do, and I'm working towards. Working well with others at the end of the day, junior residency particularly is one of those times that you are at war with the world. In the middle of the night when you have 25, 30 consults to present in the morning, you're arguing with the MRI techs, you're arguing with the emergency room, the ICU, so on and so forth. It's easy to get caught up in the adrenaline, the anger, but at the end of the day, there are ways to make all those things happen, to care best for your patients, and to provide good sign up for your co-residents without making enemies. If anything, striving to make friends, and trying to be reasonable and practical about how you sort situations. I think speaks volumes as to the type of person, the type of resident that you can be. Similar to surviving residency, staying in touch with family, but surrounding yourself with good energy. It was really children's, again, that kind of 10-day soul on call that gets to you, but having mentors and friends and other people to see you through, to pull you through your darker times, to provide a positive light, even intermittently to play a game of Madden in 1992 or whatever Dr. Helpman is playing here between cases, a nice change of pace. The ability to fall down, get back up again, I think that's best evidenced by our current R2 class. Again, the stresses, the trials and tribulations of each and every day are more than one can enumerate, but these three have done a excellent job. I had to put in the Dom photo because this is the only time I've ever seen Dom not manic and kind of running around doing 100 things, but underscores kind of the kind of work ethic and just the can-do attitude that these three have demonstrated, as well as so many other of my co-residents and junior residents.
Tell them where we were when Dom fell asleep.
That's right. This is actually our bachelor party for Dom. Congratulations to him and Stacy. But yeah, the only time that this guy has gotten any shut eye, and I think it lasted for about 10 minutes, is probably the only sleep he got that week. But the ability to keep going. This is something I can't remember. Warren Buffett or somebody talked about this. I thought it was very reasonable why people give up, why people find that neurosurgery is not for them, why in general day to day people are not able to see through their actions. And I think a lot of this applies to neurosurgery in our residency. They get stuck in the past, they don't realize what is possible, or they assume their problems are unique. nothing in neurosurgery, nothing in residency, nothing in life is, unique, difficult, or challenging enough that you can't see it through. But I think having a plan A, B, and C, and also the will to see it through is what I think makes us successful, or at least gets us through the day. The ability to make friends, not because they'll help you with kind of your shunt patients and hydrocephalus, but the thing that really kind of struck me looking back in the last 7 years are the things that I've learned from people that when I least expected. Obviously Dr. Williams has been a mentor with so many others, and I'm picking on him a little bit. I saw this in clinic one day and thought Mr. Feeney and Dr. Williams is a good fit, but the ability to kind of learn from just how people kind of handle their day-to-day interactions, but also to care for patients. Everyone has a story. This is Ken. He's a gentleman who's been in the mailroom on the ground floor Harborview for 40 years, 50 years. Yeah. So just taking time to kind of learn people's story, whether patients or your coworkers. And if you'll go into his office, I hope all junior residents will make some time. You'll see this is a map that he has of visitors from all over corners of the world. And this photo doesn't do it justice, but his whole office, the whole mailroom is adorned with photos and trinkets from his travels from truly all over the globe. Taking time for friends, smelling the roses. This is our trip to Albuquerque, where Dr. Ellen Bogan joined us and was awarded the Cloward Award back in September. I covered Chris up here, but escaping to go grab pastries, Dr. Levitt taking us to a Kraken game, and then hanging out with these other unidentified individuals Friday night after long cases. These really the friends and the memories you make are kind of what propels us through our time together, and really makes this worth doing. But also taking time for us, as our future attending Dr. Ruzovic would attest to. I think the biggest thing is just expecting the unexpected. As much thought and effort we put into things, I think a large reason why we all are here and are graced with the ability to take care of patients and work at this world-class institution is luck. This is a article from I think Scientific American that makes that point. They mention and they reference some studies where they've looked at the odds of becoming a CEO is influenced by your name and month of birth. This is something I think for those who read Freakonomics and some of those other sorts of books kind of underscore that time and time again there have been psychology studies that demonstrated those with last names earlier in the alphabet are more likely to receive tenure at top departments. So if I have any fighting chance, I guess, it's fortunate that I was born a Furrows and not a Williams or a Young. But I think at the end of the day, odd things happen and you have to adapt to them. And my own kind of last few years was the radial nerve incident that many of us well know here. But this was my EMG that I got I believe it was 6 weeks after the injury. For those who don't know, I was on research time. I fell asleep on a flight traveling here to DC to visit my mom and took a red eye. And I'm not one to be able to ever successfully sleep on flights, even though I've tried multiple times, but managed to fall asleep for an hour and a half and woke up with a complete wrist drop from my my dominant hand. A month later, still was totally out, and sobering to think through now, but this was that EMG after 6 weeks of biding my time and a lot of Medrol dose packs, hoping that the swelling would resolve. But I mean, even myself, I have to kind of stare at this again. But EMG basically demonstrated that I had no twitches in any of the innervated muscles in that hand. So again, something that we. One moment neurosurgery and our patients remind us day in, day out, but doesn't really hit home until we're kind of put into that situation, how rapidly things can change. And again, the importance of expecting the unexpected. I think similarly though, on this point, obviously my hand is now able and well, but the importance of staying patient, staying optimistic, seeking opinions out. I think Dr. Kim and I were talking about this just last week, I had effectively a dead arm for, I think, 3 months or so before there was any evidence of kind of reinnervation in that time. kind of sticking my guns and remaining patient, kind of saw things through. I sought some second opinions from some of the who's who in the peripheral neurosurgery world, like Dr. Spinner at Mayo and Susan McKinnon at WashU, and got a mix of different responses and reactions from, are you sure that you just fell asleep on a plane, to I would have surgery right away, like tomorrow on this. But I think, again, just kind of staying headstrong, but also using your environment, your friends, your family to kind of to get you through those times, and hoping for the best. And a lot of luck, as that article attributes, to get us through the day, through the month, through the residency alone. I'm not much one for self-help books, but this book by James Clear, Atomic Habits, underscores the point that Dr. Shaker and so many attendings have instilled in us day in, day out. It's one thing to go through the motions to the 10,000 hour rule to become an expert at something, but it's not only practicing deliberately that makes a difference. As Chris put it so well, is that every day kind of acting like you are the one person in the hospital that cares for this patient. Of course, there's a large breadth of medical professionals that care for each and every one of our patients, but James Clear talks about the 1% rule. Just every time you go through a task, or every day, try to make yourself 1% better at whatever you're doing, and just by the compounding of that over time, you'll reap the reward pretty quickly thereafter. This goes from practicing microneurosurgery and buying the microscope that Dr. Shaker and Josh and Rajiv have talked about, to just in the OR watching just even the most what you think are minute details to how your attending position the patient, how they handle their instruments, asking them why they've planned to do this approach versus that approach. This is something that I underappreciated my junior resident time, and found myself, trying over the last course of weeks and months to get kind of reap every sort of, pearl I can, but something that I hope to continue during fellowship and junior attendingship. I think if I could go back and do it all again, much like Chris and John said, take notes on things, kind of pay attention to things, ask questions, and really kind of to move forward kind of bit by bit each and every day. More practical, pay your parking tickets. There's a camera at 9th and Jefferson, which I'm now probably infamous for. I think I've attempted to even use my Husky card to pay off some of these tickets, but this one for $139. But during residency, don't run that red light. Take time and learn the DLS 500. Not only the DLS 500, but other pearls that each of our attendings have. You pick up on very long words and very odd diseases, but also get better at the crossword, and just learn the semantics, and kind of also some more finer facts to neurosurgery and being a clinician. 7 years is a very long time. It will age you, as it has aged me. You can see my appearance over the last couple of years. Some of us don't age though, like Chris here, and some of us age kind of better than others. But taking time to kind of get through the day, to kind of make time for yourself to some degree, and 7 years later coming out on the other side of things. It's all, again, a little unreal to be kind of at this course junction of 7 years, and the challenges that that we've seen from residency, our own junior resident struggles, to what's gone on in kind of the greater like societal level. It's hard to believe that that this kind of culminates in 7 years. I guess the support that we've had from our co-residents, from our attendings, like truly makes this a special place. And I'm indebted to Dr. Ellenbogen, rest of faculty, Chris, John, everyone else here to help see me through. So thank you for listening.